I wanted to bring up something I thought of maybe a couple weeks ago that really has to do with not just Xbox first parties, but even just first parties as a whole, which includes like PlayStation and Nintendo. And the thing that really triggered this was seeing in this 20th anniversary documentary for Obsidian that apparently their next big game, Avowed, they planned for that to be a multiplayer mainly because they wanted to sell the game to potential publishers that will publish the game. And then that changed when they got acquired by Xbox. It reminded me of this situation that I thought of during the Summer Game Fest season where we saw the PlayStation Summer Showcase, and the reception behind that. And then there was the reception behind this Xbox Showcase as well. And mainly, do we know the studios behind Animal Crossing or Fire Emblem or Pikmin from Nintendo? Do you know what studios handle those games? That is something at its core that I've realized is something that Xbox kind of has in the bag right now compared to, yes, dare I say, even their main competitor that they get compared to all the time, which is PlayStation. Why? Just look at the most recent showcase that happened for PlayStation. People kept saying that there was no first-party games in that showcase, when in reality, there was. They kept saying Spider-Man 2 alone either saved this showcase or was the only first-party game shown. How could you have done this? When, yeah, that was by Insomniac Games, which is a very notable studio, but nobody took into account their newer studios and how this showcase was really showing what their newer studios are up to. AKA Bungie, a very notorious studio. They show that they have a Marathon remake, reboot, whatever it is, in the works. And then people saw new games like Fair Game, $, that's the name of it, Fair Game Money, Helldivers 2, and Concord. Why do I bring up those three games? Because they are three first-party PlayStation games that people just, I guess, didn't really care about as much. But those are from new first-party studios like Haven, and it's a collaboration from the XDev studio that PlayStation has, which is kind of like Xbox Games publishing studio. They both have like a studio that's focused on collaborations. And Concord is by Firewalk. Those are 5 first-party games that showed up in that showcase, but I hear you. Maybe people had the problem of gameplay. Maybe they're saying, well, you're right, but those weren't really showing the games well, which I would agree with, by the way. But here's the thing. If we go back in time to not even just this year's Xbox showcase, but we go back to July of 2020, during the COVID times, and that was the year that E3 was down, and Xbox had a showcase that was the year or two following when they announced, all these new studios coming under their umbrella. And what did they do in that showcase? Well, they did the same exact thing that PlayStation did. They showed a lot of cinematic first looks and logos of what these new studios are up to. We got to see Undead Labs announce State of Decay 3. There was Playground Games announcing Fable at the very end of the show. Obsidian Entertainment showed up with like 3 games, but the main cinematic one, just like PlayStation show, was Avowed. And, there was other looks. There was Everwild from Rare and Psychonauts 2, but, that show, Forza Motorsport from Turn 10, that show did have cinematic reveals like the PlayStation show did. And yet, the core Xbox fan base, I would say, didn't bat an eye as much. The general scene for sure, absolutely. Because again, gameplay is always king, but I don't think it was as downplayed as this most recent PlayStation showcase. And why is that? And this is the big secret that Xbox has going for it right now. That is really the thing that is making their fan base, including myself, admittedly, really follow Xbox as if they are like a YouTuber that you've subscribed to, that you're checking in on their social media and seeing what they're up to. That's what Xbox has become. And it's because every one of these studios is releasing their games day and date to the player base that is Xbox, basically. Not for free. You know, you have to be an Xbox Game Pass sub. And this isn't me promoting Xbox Game Pass, but simply realizing that that tactic or that play or whatever you want to call it, that is the key difference between this most recent PlayStation showcase and that July 2020 Xbox showcase that did the same thing. Because everybody that was on Xbox saw each of those trailers, and if they were on Xbox Game Pass, they would say, oh, I get to play that eventually. Because every Xbox first-party studio gets to serve their games to me if I'm an Xbox Game Pass subscriber. But if somebody was spectating that show as primarily another console user, if you're on Nintendo or PlayStation, or even as an Xbox user that doesn't have Xbox Game Pass, then those cinematic trailers didn't do anything for you because they didn't sell the game to you. And that's what happened at the PlayStation showcase. You got to see another XDev collab. You got to see Firewalk. You got to see Haven. You even got to see Bungie. But people don't know that those are first-party studios because potentially the PlayStation fan base, while yes, a good deal of them are aware that those are first-party studios, most of them probably don't really know or care because if they see that PlayStation Studios logo, it doesn't mean much other than that stamp. You know, it's that stamp of approval that, hey, this game will probably be really good and you should hopefully buy it. But if you see the stamp of Xbox Game Studios or now Bethesda, that means this is a game that you get to play from this studio, from Obsidian Entertainment, who somehow have been working on like 4 different games since they joined Xbox. We're interested in Obsidian Entertainment all the more now, but because we know everything that they are producing is going to be able to be played by you if you are a Game Pass subscriber or by me or whatever. That also leads to a problem, though. That Arcane Studios, a brand new Xbox game studio, even though it is technically a Bethesda studio, you run into the problem of a lot more cynical eyes being branded as this first party. But you know how people all of a sudden treated Arcane Studios, who had no affiliation with Xbox before, everybody branded Arcane Studios as an Xbox studio, which is technically true since Microsoft acquired them. But all of a sudden, everybody branded Arcane Studios as a sort of pariah or something like that. That is now a label as to what Xbox Studios creates, their quality and everything. And that's another downfall. But that's also because a lot of people now identify them as that. If Haven's next game from PlayStation Studios doesn't do that good, do you think it will have the same backlash as a game that a lot of people played day and date? That's kind of my point. We don't know the team that developed Pikmin 4 unless you look into it. Was that by Retro? No, Retro is a different studio. In fact, is Retro even owned by Nintendo? I don't know. I haven't looked into it. I'm sure if you look into it, you could find out what studios that are at PlayStation, what studios are at Nintendo, and you'll have to look into what studios are at Xbox. But the difference is that if you are a person, admittedly like me, that owns all 3 of the systems, and you look into what studios are at each of these platforms and who are first party, the Xbox ones are a bit more interesting because I know they are creating a game that I can eventually play and just choose to play it instead of having to empty my wallet to play it or having that barrier of entry to play it or having that limit of what system will I play it on day and date. I could play it on my PC, I could play it on my Xbox, I could play it on my phone, but this team is developing a game that I can and may play. That's the big difference I think Xbox has got. Like, and like even Jay Wood put up this tweet that was like, here's 4 game studios that Xbox has helped to improve post-acquisition. You got Double Fine with Psychonauts 2, they got to increase the budget and they were like an indie studio. Obsidian, they got to make Avowed into the single player RPG that they have more experience with instead of having to worry about it being multiplayer. You got Bethesda with Starfield. Starfield probably would have released at the end of 2020. But because they joined Microsoft, then they got another 2 years. In Exile, they got an extra budget to do a full voiceover. And it's things like that it's like, I like hearing these updates because I know they're still trying to make the games good and they got the backing to make that game good because it's coming to me. But if I hear these updates from a game that I was considering buying, then it's good to get that update, but it just feels different. My main point of this is just, I think Xbox Game Pass existing really changes one's outlook on the studios and how relevant they are, as kind of exampled with the PlayStation Showcase. Like, you could literally just compare these two showcases with each other and just see, like I have my opinions right here that you should really watch just to compare. But generally, this is what people thought of both of the showcases generally. Like, my opinion wasn't that far off. So watch those. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in those videos.